All right, so here we go. We're with looking at Dustin Johnson here. Um, Neat thing about this video is nobody's giving really an analysis on it. It's from Row Your Rock. It's a cool little. I don't know the people that own it, but they do a lot of good videos that cover players and just let them swing and do their thing. Then you can leave it up to other people to make whatever they want to make about it, so forth. But we're going to talk about a few things and just definitions of, like, I think whatever style you're in and you're trying to learn from, you need to understand, like, whatever that coach or that system is what they mean by certain things. And so we're going to cover a lot of those things today, um, the best that we can, just to help you understand, like, angles, deliveries, pressures, energy, and all those different things, and speak, understand the language, so when you're going out to practice, you can do a lot of those things because you understand it verbally, but also maybe hopefully transfer it visually as well, which is most important. So I'm going to blow this up. And so this is Dustin Johnson. He's hitting. He's going after here a little bit more than what he normally would, but um, so really, there's a lot of different things. He's really pressuring the shaft here. He's not cocking it. He's bending it, like we talk about. That's that. As some of you know, where we're talking about where you're. Let's see if I can come back out of that. Where we're talking about where you pressure that right lifeline in against the left thumb, but you're bending it away from the wrist. And even if you're looking, which is really important, if I can do this, if you said vertical here, that's vertical, so it'd be vertical wrist cock, and of course that'd be horizontal would actually be just straight over here, right? Because that much side bend. But you can see he's got already right here. He's really done it'd be really hard for most people to really understand this. You'd almost have to feel it. But he's really pressuring that right lifeline, and some people would think that's shut, and I'm telling you, it's not shut. If you understand where that is, now it would be shut if the club head, it's there relative to vertical. If it was on top and same exact pressure, yes, it would be. But the further it gets more this way, without arm row, it's really more open. And it's hard for people to understand. So you have to understand these angles. So we're going to talk about those today, and hopefully help you understand. But when you're talking about, like, swing playing, a lot of people will get confused with, like, arm depth, like hand depth or arm depth, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. So if you take, like, the center of the hands right here, and you had somebody like had a swing that was like over here, like Matt Kuchar, his hands may be really deep over here this early, it may be on this side. But the difference is, like, Matt Kuchar has technically a lot flatter, or excuse me, not flatter, a more steep swing than, like, Dustin Johnson. And you're like, oh yeah, his hands are like back here. And so because people get confused when the hands are back here, the shaft can still be here, it can be over here, it can be, it has nothing to do with the shaft. It has to do with the depth of the hand. So the hands could still be, in some cases you might have Lee Trevino had his hands over here. So that's the depth of the swing. So anything more here is in front. Anything, if you took off the center line, like what we try to measure is like off when you're halfway back. He's just off center. He's just a little in front. He's in front, but we call that in front, and that'd be neutral. And this would be more in front of the body is what we could define it. And then anything where if you just took the hand, not the length of the swing. Now if the length was the same way and his hand position was over here, well, then his hands would be really behind his body. And I don't care. We're not even talking about shaft right now. We're not talking about this. Just hands. Because you can have your hands way back here and have a shaft that's vertical over the top. So that's where it gets a little tricky for people. They don't understand really what they're looking for. They think that swing playing a lot of times is they see somebody gets their hands way back here and they think they got a flat swing, when that has nothing to do with it. Whenever actually this guy has a very, very, very flat, if you talk about actual, not the swing, but the actual plane of the shaft, his is very, 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 very shallow. Very shallow. And it has nothing to do with arms, where your arm position is. And I think that's something really, really, really important to understand for a lot of different reasons. And then if we take that and we say, all right, we're going to go with that. All right, so you got hand position. Let's just say he's not halfway back here, but he's close, and he's going to move right through there. But he's going to be pretty neutral in general. When people think he's shut right there, and he's not. And then you got this side and you got this side. But just remember that's just where the hand position would be, not the shaft. All right, and so as we go back, we're going to go back a little bit further here. As he goes back, I'm going to have to blow this up if I can keep this drawing. Oh, no. All right, so then if you can see it right there, but let me see if I can do this. Yep, yeah, I can. All right, so then you got shaft. Like some of you say, oh, it's laid off or whatever. I mean, I don't really care too much about all this right now. I mean, it's really not. His arms are really up, but the shaft the head could be over here, the head could be over here. But now, if we're dealing with the shaft, you're dealing with the angle of the shaft. So let's bring it on. We're going to bring it on down a little bit so people can see it. And I'll stop it back about halfway. All right. So now we wouldn't even be having this conversation if this club head is not shut relative to where his hand position is because of the slant of the shaft. Now you got to remember it's because of the slant of the shaft, right? And that's swing plane. That is your shaft plane, and that is what people really consider swing plane. This would be vertical. If he had the same face rotation that he has here with a vertical shaft, like it was like, let's just say it was like, Phil Mickelson, we wouldn't even be having a conversation about him. So that's really, really important because of right wrist bend, and now it's actually because it's behind him, it's actually open, but his hands are in front. Very deadly positions, very good as far as a ball striking position. A lot of the greats came in from there. Now he's in a little different. He's trying to hit this a little further, so his arms are a little more behind him than he normally would be. Just because of the fact he's trying to probably draw this ball a little bit, and he's trying to hit a 5-iron 204. I guess he does hit it 244 yards, but in general, that's not his normal swing. He'd have his arms probably a little bit more in front and hit it like a little baby fade. But so let's go back up. I'm gonna go back up real quick. So again, when you're looking at your golf swing and you're analyzing it, remember if you're going by hand depth, don't do that. Go by the offset relative to vertical. You always want to judge vertical wrist position right here. So if yours vertical, his club head would be standing straight up. Now you're talking about steep. And that could be steep with his hands way back here. He could have his hand position here. Matt Kuchar has it, and he's got a steep downswing. He's got a trapped. He's got his arms really behind, but he knows how to take that steep position that he comes out of and tip it the right amount down by the baseline and make it work for him. But it's not like I don't think it's the most efficient because I think it leaves a lot of energy. But also, there's just several things in my opinion that I think you have to work a lot harder. They say it takes the timing out. No, every swing has to have timing. I don't care what swing you have. There's not a swing on the tour that doesn't have to have timing. But I can assure you by just ripping your arms back like whatever they call a one-plane swing, all you're doing, you rip your right arm back like you're starting a lawnmower. If anybody's on here that's been reading the one-plane swing, everybody asks about that. I can do whatever you want. No such thing, and it's not one plane anyway, and it's really a lot of planes because you're getting your arms trapped and your club steep. And it's really a horrible position for most people because they're already steep with the shaft. But when they get their arms trapped way back here behind them, they get a little bit of feeling about like, oh, they may hit it better. But, their shaft angle, this angle here, right there, never changes. It stays the same. So when they rip their arms back, they rip their arms way behind them, and they have their shaft vertical. They think they have a flat swing now, and they don't. It's not a flat swing. Right there's a flat swing, but his arms are really high. So it has nothing to do with your arm height or your arm, like again, over here, anything, he's pretty much neutral with that, right on the right shoulder. But you might have Furyk that would be, I would consider that upright with the, but again, when he goes and does his downswing, he creates a beautiful angle, and that makes him a very, very shallow hitter of the ball. All right, because it has nothing to do with his hand position. It has to do with the shaft angle, and that's only the shaft angle is only the thing that shaft angle can be. How do you shallow it? You may ask me, well, how do they do that then? Like we always talk about, the right wrist, the way it bends away from the left wrist, not the left wrist. It's not a bowed left wrist. Trust me, if that left wrist was bowed and that shaft was standing straight up, which it would be if he was actually bowing it, his right wrist is pressing underneath that left wrist. And if you ever study it, and I have, trust me a lot, the right wrist, the lifeline is pressing into that, and it's bowing the left wrist, but this left wrist is not bowed. And that's what freaks people out when you actually understand it. And because when people try to bow their left wrist, they usually stand the shaft straight up and down, and when they do, they come straight down. That now you got a steep shaft with a shut club, and now you got a lot of problems. But see, you can have a really high arm position or upright arm position as long as you can have slant off this the side bend. And you don't use, he's not using his left arm. He's not rolling his left arm here. His left arm, if you look at his left arm, it's not rolling that way. You can see it. His left arm elbow is pointing right at us. He's not rolling that way out here and creating a lot of this rotation with that left arm to do it. He's doing it through this right wrist. I'm telling you. He's taking that right wrist and he's bending it, pressing that lifeline underneath into that left thumb. And by him doing that with a little slight internal rotation of the right forearm at the same time as he's doing that, that creates an offset. And when it creates that offset angle relative to vertical, then now we got some business. Now, if you go the other way, that's fine. And I don't have time, or I do have time, but if you wanted to go this way with Kenny Perry, where you get across the line, no problem. No problem. You're not going to see anybody that's across the line keep the club head across the line as they're starting back to hit the ball. What you're going to see, I don't care what line they're over here, they're playing on the tour, like Kenny Perry points the club over here. When he starts to unwind, what you'll see is this unraveling, and then the right wrist will bend right back into this position. Now, some of these players will come down a little more vertical. Like when they come down, the shaft might be up and down like this, about right in here. And then all of a sudden, you'll see this movement, this offset movement that they're making with the wrist. Again, it's just the wrist. There's nothing they're doing with the body. There's nothing special they're doing. It's all arms and wrist. So when they come down, they get down this area. They make this move that he's making right. He's made it the whole thing. They're just making it down towards the bottom of the ball, a la like Phil Mickelson, Jason Day's kind of vertical, Matt Kuchar or whatever. There's players that come down that have the shaft not dead vertical, but it's usually a little bit offset. It just may not be as much as that. And they're coming down, and it's okay and everything. It's very steep, and then all of a sudden they make this movement very late down by the baseline, and that keeps the club head behind the hands enough to play on the tour. And because if you don't, you're not playing out there. You have to have that movement. So, but it's good to know, what when somebody says, your club's in front of you, well, what does that really mean? Well, no really perfect way to say what's in front of you. I mean, chest half high, and what I've seen in my experience, when you've got the club over the top of your right shoulder in your backswing, that's neutral. Center is halfway coming down, halfway going back. That's center, where your chest is if the hand position there, that's neutral. Anything there, your hand position is behind. Anything over here is in front. Real simple. You're steep. If that club, he's right here, he's pushing it right on the edge. I mean, he's probably just shade flat right there. And then anything over here would be steep. And then anything where the club head is over the top of the hands, that is truly over the top. And what freaks people out is they think that over the top is when people pull their arms. They think when players kick their arms this way, they think they're over the top, and that is not true. Study Carl Peterson's swing. I suggest any of you Google his golf swing down the line and watch what happens. He takes his arms. There's a lot of players that do, and Dustin does on certain shots. He's not doing here. He's trying to draw, but they'll move their arm. This is no big deal to move their arms out that way. That's not a big deal. But the more they move the club this way, their hands that way, that direction, the more that they have to have more of that right wrist bend, like I was showing you, like under. That's what counters. If it's coming out, they've got to counter that back so they can keep that angle. So, or let's just say, because especially if you kick them out, kicking them out is not a big deal. A lot of people think that they're safe if they keep their hands back like this. They keep them way back here in their downswing. not a player on the tour that wants to do that. If you ever been out there and talked to him, I mean, if you ever talked to anybody that really knows what's going on in golf swing, there's not a player in the world that wants their hand. Maybe Matt Kuchar, but he doesn't want him here on his downswing either. He's got to get his further out than anybody because he already has them back here in his backswing. So what my point is you have to understand where you're trying to go. This pushing your arms this way on the downswing is not what makes people get over the top. What happens if he took it, if his arms moved this, let's just say straight down this way, no problem, and he took his right wrist, I'm going to try to help illustrate this, and he kicks that right wrist over, kicks it out, side bends that way, and he extends it. So he extends it and he side bends at the same time. His club head would be right. It would be way over the top over here, and then his hands would be wherever they want to be. It would be an over the top movement. Only because of taking the right wrist. If he stayed right where he's at and kicked the right wrist that way, and he doesn't have to do anything else. That's gonna make the shaft plane change, the tipping of it. All right, now if he extends the right wrist, so if he kicks it out, like extends it, and he makes this movement, so now he's went over the top and he's casted it. So you have those two movements. You have a movement that's kicking it away from the body and away from the hands, which is going to be over the top, and then you're extending it down as well. You're extending it towards the ground at the same time. And that's where you see, like when the club head gets down, or the hands get in this area, the club head's standing way over here, down on the baseline. It's way outside. So that's what I was talking about with the wrist and the arms control that. It's not the hips, it's not your downswing, it's not any of this stuff. You can go, and if nobody believes me, I don't really care. I just know for a fact I can have my body in literally any position, and I'm telling you, vertical, flat, over the top, all based on your wrist or your arms. And you're really wrist only there. Your pressure that you can get into the side of the shaft, which he has the best pressure on the tour. John Rahm's really close, but the best one is Dustin. He's got the best pressure on the side of the shaft than anybody on the tour. And with that being said, so all he's got to do is he just keeps it. He doesn't have to lose it. He doesn't have to add any, take any away. That's why you have a really wide downswing and really not swing really hard. And he has the most power and really the most accuracy. And he's the most accurate player on the tour because you have to respect distance and accuracy. And because the reason why I say that, distance is a part of the game. So you can't tell me if somebody can hit, oh, well, no, there's a player out there who can hit it 240 yards and hits it straight every single time. Well, yeah, he can too. He can hit a 5-iron. He can hit a 5-iron every fairway, never miss a fairway the rest of his career. But you know why he doesn't want to do it? Because he wants to go ahead and hit it 340 and take his chances out of the rough from 80 yards. And if he does hit all the fairways that day, then he goes and shoots 60-0. So, yeah, distance is you can't say, oh, you're the most accurate. I think amateurs need to be thinking accurate, but you have to realize at the speed that he's swinging at, he's the most accurate ball striker on the planet because his speeds are so much higher. If you take somebody hits it 240 yards and they hit it dead straight every time and they're just barely dink and dunk it or whatever, but if you ramped up their swing speed and they were hitting it solid and you ramped their swing speeds up on the angles that they launched it on, you'd find that same player that was launching at 240, 250 is probably going to miss fairways every single time. It'd be a lot. It wouldn't be every time, but it would be a lot of fairways they would miss if you had the same miles per hour that he has. Because the faster you can swing the club, the further you can hit that golf ball. You're a few degrees offline hitting it 300 yards versus 3 feet. Common sense tells you 3 feet, you knock it in the cup. At 300 yards, you might be in somebody's backyard. So as far as just degrees, there's no question. There's a science to it. There's mathematics to that, and it's real. And so he's probably got to be the best he's best ball striker I've ever seen. There's not anybody close because I'm not one of those that goes, oh, you got to be a purist and all that. Look, he couldn't even play old persimmon clubs and all those things. He'd break them every time he hits them because the equipment could not stand it. Put it that way. For somebody like him, goes through the back of the club every time. He play. You don't think he could play wooden clubs? You lost your mind. He couldn't. He couldn't play them because he'd break one about every 2 holes. So, and I'm as pure. I've been in the game a long, 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 long time. But I can assure you, I'm old school. But I can assure you, I understand when the new generation is coming out. You have to respect them and not say, "Oh, they don't know what they're doing. They're not, purist or whatever." I can assure you, he's a purist, the purest I've ever seen. So, and he does it with a lot of he does a lot of things that we like to talk about. We like to think that we hopefully people can be better at. But there's some things he's doing that we've been teaching for a long, long, long time, and he takes advantage of it. He's teaching us. That's for sure. He is teaching us. But body wise, I mean, how many people are going to be 6'5"? How many are going to be his age? How many are going to have monkey arms where they hang all the way down their knees? How many people can dunk a basket? And all that stuff doesn't mean nothing if you don't swing right. Because I've seen them. I've worked with golfers before. I worked with a player that played on the Tennessee Titans back, and I've told the story several times. The guy could literally jump over my head, sitting, standing still. I mean, the guy was a freak athlete, just insane. Couldn't hit a 7-iron 100 yards. He's far more athletic than Dustin Johnson. It wouldn't even be. I would let him do a jumping contest, a running contest, any contest you want to do. I'd let him have him do it as far as athletic ability. And I promise you, this guy would wax Dustin Johnson every day of the week. Rotation, same thing. I don't care what it is. Mobility, jumping. You do whatever you want. No matter. Oh, basketball, that's fine. He's going to win. The guy I'm talking about is he's a professional NFL athlete, world class. And a guy could not hit the ball 100 yards because he had no idea what he's doing. He never played the game. He had no feel. He had no talent. He had no talent for the actual sport, skill set for the sport. None, zero. And so my point is because everybody says, oh, he's so tall and this and that. Ricky Fowler's not tall. Last I saw, Roy McIlroy wasn't tall. I think I got him by 1 inch. And seems like he's only about 5 or 10 yards behind Dustin Johnson, and he's got more majors. It's not so. A lot of these people make it out, and you hear watching the TV stuff. You start buying into too much, like, oh, they're just wonderful. And he is. He's a phenomenal athlete for a golfer. He's not for an NFL athlete. He's not for NBA. That's why he's not playing it. And so, but what he is, he's got a phenomenal skill set. He's got a hell of a build for the game, but he knows how to do it. When I say that, he can just do it, just like the commercial. He can just do it. But so that even makes him more dangerous because he's not thinking about it. No, he's not trying to figure it out. He already has this. But there's things that you can really learn and principles that you can learn off of somebody like that, even though you can't move like them. You might not ever be as fluid. You might not ever have the arc. You might not have the width. You might not have the rotation. You might not. But there's some things you can do with the shaft and the arms that he can do. And for example, even if I back this out, if I back it out just to, let's just say, there's a lot of players that play golf from right here. That's their backswing. There's players that play shorter than that. I got an uncle that plays shorter than that, and I think he's won 4 club championships. But it's because they create the right angles. They create angles early, and then they keep them. So you don't have to have this big backswing and this big, threat. You don't have to have this massive speed, but you better have angles. You better have angles, energy, and pressures. So, and that's really what this is to help people understand. When that, and a lot of times, if I hope people can understand this one, but when they start down, like right here, he's got a nice. It's not really that much offset right there. It's good, pretty much like Jordan Spieth right there. But he will create more offset into that wrist as it keeps going. If you watch, he will create more as he keeps going. He will keep bending that back wrist under, and that's what bows. It doesn't bow. It bows the left wrist a little bit. The left wrist is not bowing on its own. The right wrist is bowing the left wrist, and that's look. You don't have to buy into what I'm saying. I don't really care. That's what creates this. And there's also some internal rotation of the arm that creates that offset angle. Now, that shaft is extremely flat. Now, this is extremely flat, all right, with the shaft. And I say shouldn't say extremely flat. It's a hell of a good position to be in because this is vertical. We know that's vertical. Anything over there is flat. Anything over here is over the top. Steep. This is steep. This is probably steep. That's in the ballpark. And then over here would be like right on the edge of like a flat shaft. But he's got upright arms, right? So his arms are, we know his hand position is more like kind of neutral to fairly upright in general. All right, but he's got an offset shaft. So now he's got a lot of things working for him. You know his arms are going to be in the front of him coming down, and now he's got an offset shaft because of the right wrist. You're in a good position to be in if you're playing that way. All right. Now you don't have to play that way. It's just if you look at the greatest ball strikers, that's what they do. They get that into there. Every player has to do it. It's just a matter of when you do it. You don't have to do it right here. You might be coming down, like I was saying, fairly vertical, and then they'll run that wrist back like I was talking about underneath, and that kicks the head back down here on this baseline, and then they smoke it. Like Phil Mickelson, Gary Woodland does that. Matt Kuchar, a little bit different, but same. They all have to have the same move. Their arm positions are always going to look way different. Their hip positions, how they turn, how they can torque through their body, all got to be different. But they have to have that move, no matter who they are. Two players that have this move that are very identical, and nobody really talks about it with like Jordan Spieth, but he has the same move. I mean, it's the same thing. It doesn't look the same at the top because it goes into a few. It keeps his right arm on top a little bit more. It keeps it where his shaft angle is not quite as much, but it's not very much. If you study what they do, the only difference between these two is that Dustin has probably 25 more degrees of thoracic mobility than Jordan, and that doesn't hurt because that means you can just blast it out of the, but they're really actually a lot the same. The one thing, if you want to look at swings, and you're not taking it outside, looping and all this stuff. He doesn't loop the clubs. No, there's always arm loop this way and bring your arms back. You don't fake your arms out. And that's what some people say. Oh, I'll reroute my arms this way. No, that doesn't. That's silly. These players really are most of the time trying to get their arms back over here, but their wrist bend. It's the wrist bend's what makes the club offset. I don't care how far you want to bring your arms out or back. Even if you bring your arms back, all right. If you want to reroute your arms, all right, and you want to go, okay, I'll just loop them this way. If you ever see somebody that does that, their shaft actually gets vertical. So now you got trapped arms and a vertical shaft. So now you're very steep with trapped arms. And so now you're stuck because the club's just going to stick in the ground probably 3 feet behind the ball. Because you got it more steep. You don't understand that it's not an arm loop. That's not what does it. It's just a wrist movement. And, I try to talk about it as much as possible. I'm not hiding anything, but it's a right wrist bend and it's an internal rotation of that forearm at the same time. And the elbow can be in a lot of different positions. It could be stuck out, it could be up, it could be all this. It's just not. It has nothing to do with the actual elbow itself, but it does have to do with the arm and the wrist at the same time. When they bend that wrist back and they internally rotate that arm in, that creates this offset angle. You have to have that to play golf. You don't have to have it to play golf. You have to have it to play. You have to have it to play on the tour. If you don't have it, no, there's never been anybody that didn't have it, didn't play on the tour. It's just a matter where they do it. So when you're studying your swings and you're trying to analyze it, when you're coming down and you see that you've got a vertical shaft angle, it doesn't mean that you can't play. I mean, I can show you, like even over here, if you barely see this, Jason Day plays vertical right there. But you got some, he makes the same movement back away that I'm talking about here. He just makes it down by his hip high, halfway down, not halfway down. Literally, the club's moving 100 and something miles an hour. And then he makes a movement. I wouldn't say compensated. Everybody has to compensate and recover. Every player, Dustin Johnson, all of them. But he has to recover a lot later in the swing versus where somebody like him, Dustin Johnson or Jordan Spieth or a Jim Furyk or Tiger Woods back in the heyday when he was really on, so forth. There's more recovery when the shaft's more vertical, because you can and if you take it as an amateur, which is what we're dealing with, 99.9% of who I deal with are amateur. When they slam the club down, vertical, just straight down from here, their hand position, they get the shaft tipped up over here. The next movement is they're going to side bend the right wrist and extend it, so the club head's going to come slamming way over the top. And it has nothing to do with bringing their arms this way. It has everything to do with casting or side bending their wrist this way, and then also extending their wrist, uncocking the wrist. When those two things happen, and you move your arms this direction, it won't matter what direction really, it's going to be a sad story for you because you're going to be way over the top. You're going to wipe it, swing straight across the ball. And all that swinging across the ball is because of not understanding how to torque this right wrist and keep the shaft behind the wrist. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and it's about as much as I can get into it. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, you got vertical, you got this would be flat, this would be flatter, or anything. This is always flatter. You start to get into arm rotation right there. And then anything where the club head is across the vertical line would be, over the top. This would be steep. This is over the top. This would be, you call flat or underplane, doesn't really matter. It's hard to say if I don't know exactly that. I wouldn't know that I would say he's underplaying, but I think he's hitting a draw there, so he's probably slightly underplaying. But right in here is neutral, neutral. This area is really great, right there, right in here. All right, this ain't neutral, and this isn't neutral. But over here, this is neutral. You start laying it down more than that, you're starting to have to then you have to deal with arm rotation. You get you get it flatter, but then you have other problems because now you're going to have to tip the arm back over because you have arm. The shaft in the arm, the shaft in the face can only do what your wrist and your arms do. There's no such thing as face and shaft. That's why I don't like go, oh, okay, yeah, your shaft is over here and then your face is, no such thing. It's only relative to what your wrists do and your arms. And when you understand that, so your arms are all about rotation, so that's face, and then your wrists all are about would be about the shaft, the side bending of the shaft, the angle that you offset angle relative to vertical to the shaft. And people get those confused. And once you understand that the wrist can only side bend and cock up and down, and the arms have more functions than the wrist. I don't want to get into too much of that, but once you understand their functions, then you understand that there is no such thing as a club face. Once you take a club face with a open, a couple degrees open or square at address, and you've made it, now everything's not. There's no club face. There is no shaft. It's your wrist and your arms dictate everything at that particular time. Your body can dictate some things as well, but number one, 100%. I don't care what your body's doing, how much you sway or twist or this or that or whatever. Your wrist and your arms and your eyes dictate what you can or can't do, and that's a fact. And then if you get your body better behind it, well, then you can get better. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, and I hope that answers a lot of questions, helps people understand what they need to be looking for in their own golf swing. We're not trying to look like Dustin Johnson, but because you're not. But you are looking at. You better be understanding. You better understand wherever your hands are. I don't care where they are, over here, here. You better understand where they are first. You better know where those are, and you better understand what vertical is. That's it. I don't care if your hands are back here and that's vertical, good. You need offset. If they're over here, you better have offset. You better have a lot more offset the more you're over there. So, you have to, you want to understand what you're really trying to do and what your swing is, but you have to understand the labels of it, because most people think it's just, that would be a really upright, steep swing. And I'm going to assure you all day long, that is not upright and that ain't steep. So, but anyway, we'll go ahead and open it up for some questions, and anybody can fire away.
So, Matt, where would the club be when his arms are waist high?
You mean coming down or like?
Yeah, coming down.
Yeah. So, well, his arms are going to be in front of us. You'll see it gets back in front of his chest. Now he's hitting a little bit of a draw here. Let me just see if I can find this. I lost it. This is so slow. And normally his arms would be coming a little bit more out, but he's hitting a draw. Like I said, he's trying to hit it 244 yards. So, but you see his arms are way out in front of his hip. This is where people they all think oh, you got to get your arms, you need your hand position way back here, right where his elbow's at. You're crazy. Like, he's in a draw, and his hand position's way out in front of it. You see how far his hand position is in front of his hips.
Yep.
Here's where people don't, they think if they get their hands back here that their shaft is going to be not steep. You have your hands right, you can have your hands right there, and the club be the club head be literally all the way over here, tipping already. I see it all the time. It has nothing to do with hand position depth. So right here is like pretty much perfect for what he's trying to hit. All right, so but we're going to say his hand position's here, but then you got to remember vertical's vertical. His hand position right in front of his body. It's like it's actually way out. It's way further out there than like most people would even imagine. They couldn't imagine having their hands that far. But now the reason why his shaft is not is because of his wrist. All right, and because his arms are have internally rotated the right spot, he's got that side of the shaft just extremely loaded. All right, I mean it's just pressured like crazy. There's just really no way. I mean it would take you'd really have to have a hiccup literally from right there, like lightning strike you to not hit it solid from right there. That's why it's solid literally every shot. And it's because and it's not, it's two factors to that. If you just said, well, I mean you could have this angle, but you got to have the pressure. And the pressure's not like down cocking and all that. I'm talking about the angle it's already at, like the angle it's rotated to, and not shut. I can assure you, and that freaks people out. If that club head moved this way to here, the same position of the club face, and it was here on vertical on top, that's a shut club, and we wouldn't even have a conversation. He'd knock it in that water right there about 110 yards and be fat, toe fat. But because the club is offset, it's not. It's not because it's offset. And that's what we talk about. And that's a very, very nice angle right there because it's just swiveling around. I mean, he's going to have to rotate a little bit more than some of the, if it was a little bit steeper, like you might see like a Justin Rose right in here in that area. So it wouldn't have to require as much body rotation, but that's okay. This angle right here has always been proven to where he's at right there. That's a big angle, and those have always proven to be phenomenal ball strikers when you can create those offset angles. But it's also, if the shaft was backwards, we call it upside down, the heel was toe, if the toe was back this way, open, what most people would think square, he would have to do a lot of dancing with that forearm and a lot of rotating, and it's unnecessary. He don't have to do anything. He's good. He doesn't have to hold on. He's not holding on. He's just keeping what he got. He's not holding on. There's no holding on. These people think that Trevino and them held on. They didn't hold on to anything. And none of them held on. It's none of that. You have to understand it. You have to be there. You have to be in that position yourself to be there to understand what that's really like. That position is not a hold on. It's a different energy, but it's definitely not a hold on. They're not like, that's not like, rerouting the club and slamming it back this way and then hanging on through impact. If that worked, well, hell, there'd have been nobody needing teachers. That's what everybody would do. But that's not what they're doing. They're creating this, if you just, common sense, man. Vertical, that's not vertical. And you got the side of the shaft that I'll talk about all the time. I can see it. And most people, when they see that club face, they, oh, that's shut. It's not shut. You need to see some of that. But if you see that club face like that, and that shaft is vertical, you got some serious problems coming. I mean, you're better to have it way open up here, actually, so you can flip it and, maybe keep it on the planet. But, you're not going to work. It's not going to work. If this is over here, it doesn't work. But it's because, again, of that internal rotation of the forearm and the right wrist bend against that left thumb. That right lifeline bending against that left thumb. And you'll see players that get it down here where, like I said, the shaft will be vertical right here, and then they make that move again, and it kicks the head just behind the hands, and it looks like that, but it's way down here at the bottom. It doesn't look like that. They get the pressure really late, and it keeps them from, missing off the yard. But when anybody comes down and they see their body, they go, most people, when they see it, that's what I'm trying to explain is, if they just see, like, they get their club right here and they go, oh, it's just because your hands went out. Keep your hands back on the downswing. Yeah, it'd be crazy. That doesn't have anything to do with anything. It just means you got your hand. Now you got another problem. You got your hands trapped and you got a vertical club. Yeah, that doesn't fix the angle. The only way the club gets there, it's not the body tilting. It's not the, it's the back wrist. It's it. That's it. If I take the back wrist right here, no question about it, and even if I just extended it, like if I went into extension, casted it, all right, casted it. if I casted it fully from right here, the club would be, a little bit, it'd be really close. Like he could cast it from right there, from where he's at. He could cast and flick it. It wouldn't go as near as far because he'd lose so much pressure in the shadow. He'd go maybe pretty straight. But if he went, when somebody's bringing their hands back out in front like he is, when they side bend the right wrist, not bring their hands out, when the right wrist only kicks out, that's when you see that head's following whatever you're doing with that wrist. If you want to kick it, if you want to extend it, the head's kicking down, you're going to lose lag, right? Everybody, and you're not trying to hold on either. I don't want to get anybody that, but if you kick it out, it's going to have a form of kind of going somewhat over the top, but not really necessarily. But I guarantee you, when you say a head kick out over the hands and get vertical, that's the right wrist. There's no question. It's not a debatable issue. It's just science. So that's where there's some things that are debatable. I mean, that one ain't one of them. Not if you understand it, not if you've studied it, not if you understand and you've been through it, you understand biomechanics, the functions of what the wrist and the arms can do. Forget the body. If you understand what they can and cannot do, you will never, ever be over the top ever again. There ain't no play. Ain't no way. You might be up behind the ball. You might be underplaying too much. You might have body issues that you have to deal with later. But the first thing you need to do is deal with wrists and arms, because that's what you're holding. You're holding it with your hands, but your wrist and your arms, the hands are just there to apply a certain sense of pressure, and then they have their function. I mean, grip needs to be somewhere in a gray area, whatever that may be. There's a million grips on the tour, ugly, pretty, neutral, whatever that may be. But you gotta have a sense for what you need in doing. And there's grips that really have no chance because they're just so weak and so forth. You better almost be strong, a stronger grip and so forth. But the bottom line is, when you hold that, once you get a hold of that club, when you take it back, where you're taking it back to are based on where your arms will allow you, because your arms are swingers. They can swing in multi directions. They can swing way in front, way behind, whatever. And then and they can swing up and they swing down, things like that. So it's part of their function. The elbows can flex and extend, part of the arm function. The wrist can only side bend left and right and up and down. When the right wrist kicks, if I'm right here, no such thing as like a hit impulse either. I mean, it's just understanding. The right wrist bends this way, the club goes that way. The right wrist uncocks this way, they could call it extension, club drops below, and you lose lag. That's all it is. If you see somebody that has a lot of club face roll, that doesn't come from the club face. Nothing happens in the club face. It all happens here. It happens in the arms. So that means there's left arm roll or right arm roll, and there's a couple other options, but that's number one. When you see a left arm roll, what that does is make the left wrist, that's how the wrist gets cupped or whatever, and so forth. So some players cock the club up on the backswing. When they do, it gets vertical. As they start down, they don't reroute their arms. I mean, they can redirect their arms, but it really doesn't have anything to do, like the A swing, for example. They would try to go over here, and by theory, it would come back over here. That's crazy. It's nonsense. That's just the player. It has nothing to do with it. I mean, you can do that. It's wasting a lot of energy. You're making like 5 movements, and you still have to make the same movement we're talking about. So, if you want, all you got to do is go inside and get in a mirror and study this. Get your wrist to cock vertical, and then don't roll your arms. Don't do anything. Just stay here when you're vertical in a mirror, and then don't tilt your body. It's an isolated movement. Don't do anything. Stay in this position where the club head is vertical, right here, like you're on your downswing, and then take your right wrist and bend it sideways and see what happens. And keep it bent back up as well, because you're going to keep it up. You're going to keep the pressure back. And just see what it looks like. And then do the opposite. Cast it down and kick it out at the same time, because that's what everybody does. It's over the top. And I'm not saying everybody on here is over the top. You could be underplaying. A lot of times now there's body misses as well. We're not talking about really those tonight, but you can still, if you kick this arm out underneath and bend that wrist, and you get this club to underneath, and your body is tilted this way, kind of pointing like vertical, and you swing too far in and out, now you got what we call a better player's miss. And you see that. And then you'll see a lot of right arm roll through the ball, and you'll see a lot of compensation. Not normally what we see. I'd much rather he's playing level to the ground. What I always love about his swing, he's playing level to the ground right here. You know, he's not playing uphill golf. He's playing not playing downhill. He's playing level. He's got the club offset, and he's got all the pressure in the perfect area of that shaft, and he doesn't give an inch. He doesn't lose 1 inch of that pressure. He keeps that pressure all the way through the shot. So he keeps it as that club comes through, gives no pressure away. Now it doesn't matter. It doesn't anything. It doesn't matter if we swing over here. That club's just going there. So it's a tricky thing. So I mean, yeah, it's not tricky. I mean, it's really not that many things. I'm glad it's not like, it's not like algebra. It's only like, but I promise you, nobody has to believe me. And I really, be honest with you, I don't really care if anybody does or doesn't. I really don't. I know it. I can do it. I can prove it. I can do it as a player, and I can do it as a teacher with my players and teach them how to do it, what it is. I don't care what anybody believes. I know it's real. And it's as real as it's the only thing that I know that's real in this game is that pressure and that energy. And so when you get here, where if you want your shaft to not be vertical, it's what you're doing with the back right wrist, and your internal arm rotation is the other key secret to that. And I haven't really got a really good video on that one yet. I'm really kind of leery about people putting one of them out there. I don't want anybody copying what we're doing, but the other stuff I'm not. The side bend gets you plenty. That'll get you enough. But to get there is not by looping the arms back this way and that way. To get there it has to do with that right wrist bend. And then you keep that as long as you can. You're not holding on. You're not holding on, and you're not casting. It's just neutral. That's where I was talking about the side of the shaft. And then you got a neutral shot. See, even right here, he's already pressuring that shaft right there. He's pressuring that right lifeline against that left thumb, and he's getting pressure, and he's getting it from a side bending, not vertical. He's getting it from a side bend. And then here he adds more in right before the end of transition. He adds more of it. There's the true float. And now he's got the slowdown effect, and now he's starting down, and he's trying to hit 240, and he had a really long slowdown effect. Now look at where the hat is relative to the hands. I mean, you're gonna be hard to miss it from there. You'd really have to, you have to have. If you miss it from there, there's something I don't know. I don't know how you really could. It'd be very, very, very difficult. Any other questions? Yeah, I would just tell everybody get in a mirror and just take your club halfway. I don't care if it's your backswing or downswing. Just stop and look at it and make your club just stand straight up and down. Just like because some people they say, oh, thumbs up like the hitchhiker drill. Look, if you want to do that, I mean, you can. That's fine. I mean, I would do it. That's where I'd start, like the thumbs up. It's not where you want to be. Your thumb should be to the side, but then if you do, you got to be careful with arm rotation, because then, if you add arm rotation and some weird body twisting and stuff like that, you can get the club in some weird wild areas there too. But if you really just see, I mean, you can see his thumb right there. I just covered it up. You can see his thumb right there. It's not vertical. It's like, no way it's vertical. You don't want your thumb vertical. And the thumb does not do anything. It might be a trigger point for you, but again, it's his wrist and arm. Wrist 99%, arm 10% of how you can get that offset wrist. That wrist is bent backwards. All right. If you take his thumb, and because everybody can kind of see it there, and it kicks back over this way, that's what we call side bend of the wrist. The only way that thumb can go that way is through the side bending of the wrist biomechanically. The club's coming with it. And the more you do it, the more it ends up over here, over the top. And the more it does that, the more it swings this way. So you get a toe wipe jam, you get a toe wipe, and we wouldn't be talking about it. I mean, you're also going to lose a lot of energy because it's a form of extension as well. So if you kick it back like he's doing without tilting the body, and it's an isolated movement. When you're doing this, don't kick your body, your hips, don't move anything, don't aim, don't tilt your body to the right, don't try to do anything crazy. Just one simple movement. Just take your here, let's make it vertical when you're practicing tonight. Kick the wrist back sideways and hold it. That's it. You'll get a form of what we're talking about if you do that. You'll get a form. You're not going to have it all. You have to learn about pressure. And whether you have that right now at this point is not the most important thing. You'll have enough. You'll have angle. And you need that angle. Then when you start to understand how to pressurize that shaft over time, then you'll be like, oh boy, now we got a whole nother world here. Because when you get the angle like that, the offset angle with pressure in the side of the shaft that I talk about, yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun to play golf. It's a lot of fun to hit golf balls. A lot of fun to play and beat your buddies. So, any other questions? Doesn't sound like there are. And so, like I said, we'll work on a little bit more body mechanics on the next one, on the next session. And we work on wrist and arms primarily all the time because wrist and arms are the most important thing by far. Your hands hold the club. We need to work a little bit, talk about the grip here pretty soon because you need to be in a great. I think players need to. When I say people grip the club, they don't grip it. They grip it. They don't grip it isolated. They bend their body to what they're trying to do, and I'll have to explain that. Like they don't make the grip the grip. They make their body bend. If they're trying to make it stronger, they bend their body to the right. They try to make it weaker with whatever by that philosophy. They bend their body to the left. And so, they start bending their body over the yard, and it's an isolated movement. The body should stay square, like a cross. I mean, across level and vertical. There's no need to tilt one way or the other when you put your hands on a golf club. There's zero. I don't care how strong or weak the grip is. Now, we are going to talk about philosophies here, too, coming up soon about what is weak and what is strong and why it's what's BS and what's not BS about the grip. Because the grip is different with every player, and a lot of them will build it into the style of their swing subconsciously because of how many rounds of golf they play and competitive and talented they are. And a lot of times your body will react to what your wrist and arms do and what you build. So if you build a grip a certain way, and then you build a swing a certain way, your arms, wrist, whatever that action may be, your body will react fairly. I believe it. It's not going to be perfect relative to it, but it starts to follow the lead of your wrist and your arms. It just does, and I'll have to explain that in another session. But it will usually follow, and if it doesn't, then it's easy to somewhat build the body in. I don't think teaching the body in the golf swing is the hardest thing. I think teaching the wrist and the arms I shouldn't say the hardest thing. The most important thing is get the wrist and arms, and then we'll deal with the body. You get the wrist and arms right, and you get those things. You get the club offset. You get it creating these great angles and pressures. And then I've never not been able to get anybody into position with their body. And it's just not that complex. I mean, body's complex, but the wrist and arms are far more because they're dealing more with what you're striking with and your eyes as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. And we'll be probably coming back over here. I might do another one this weekend. I might do another webinar in the next couple of days. But always feel free to send in your videos. Anytime you want to send them in, fire them away, and we'll put them up on the webinar, and we'll analyze them, and we can kind of go over some of the things that I'm going over here, like what we're doing here, and help you more understand why and what. And it might not be angle, it might be pressure, it might be body, whatever it is. But anybody can send them in. The more style, it doesn't help me. I know what we're trying to do, but it helps the players. And so, if you're trying to make your own game better, send it in. Don't be bashful. Send it in. I'll run through it. It might be constructive criticism, and it also might be one of those things where everybody's got a different style. I'm not teaching this style. You have to understand. I'm just saying this movement that I'm looking at right here and you're looking at has to happen. It's just a matter of where does it happen at. I teach it earlier than a lot of people. I don't know a lot of people that even actually know about it. I don't really care, but I can tell you it has to happen whether you're coming down vertical, or you're coming down with an angle or a big angle like Sergio, or there's certain movements that you have to make that happen. You have to have the movement, But you also have to know kind of what style your swing is. I mean, Jason Day is not going to change his style. You know, he's a lot steeper than what Dustin is here. There's never need, and Dustin's not going to change his style. They don't need to. I believe Dustin has a major advantage over him, but from what he's doing mechanically, but Jason's never going to do that. He's going to swing. He's going to do his style, but he still has to have the same movement Dustin has, but he just has to do it a lot later in the downswing, and he compensates his spine a little bit as well. And that's why he has some back issues. So, but I'm going to wrap it up there, and I hope everybody has a great weekend, and look forward to talking to everybody here pretty soon.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.